Welcome, warriors.
Yay!
Woohoo!
Yeah.
We are so stoked to be sharing this interview with you all today. We had a fabulous guest. His name is Dimitri Colbert. And before Abby hops into her recap, let me give you all a little bit of information about Dimitri. Dimitri is a 33-year-old motivational speaker and voiceover artist originally from Jacksonville, North Carolina. He spent 10 years in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing small motivational speeches to at-risk youth for nonprofit organizations such as IAA Athletics and performing stand-up comedy as well. His mantra has always been about positive perseverance. He's here to encourage and support others in their journey through life's anxious and often choppy waters. All right, Miss Abby, let's hear about this chat.
Yes. So I say this every single time we have guests, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I could have had this conversation for like 3 more hours, 10 more hours, 80 more hours. I don't know.
All day.
This was so enjoyable. Warriors, you definitely want to hear this conversation.
Yes.
The analogies are on fire, right?
Yep. Like postcards, all of them.
Yes.
Motivational posters, everything
yes.
he says.
Yes, everything. Like it was just the whole time during this conversation, I'm like, I feel so honored that we get to be having this conversation. Like I'm learning so much. I'm feeling like part of this community, it was an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
Also fun fact, y'all, Dimitri found us through our YouTube channel. So if you're not, listening to us on YouTube, you can find us there too and leave some comments. But I just love how we're connecting with warriors in all these different ways. Thank you, technology.
Yes, it does have its pros, I guess. I mean, we are on tech right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good,
Anyway. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. But
yeah, it's a mixed bag. Fair enough.
So to recap this, which is so super hard, and because I'm still excited by the chat, it's even harder. I'll say that, Dimitri really started off by sharing how, without knowing it was anxiety started to show up at the age of 18 for him in his freshman year of college. And while he was feeling these things that, he didn't know at the time was anxiety, he mostly kept it to himself and was feeling a lot of shame around this experience. And it wasn't until, when he was back home and he reconnected with someone from college who had a very similar experience to him that he realized like, oh, wow, I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in this experience that I'm having. He shares how he breaks the cycle of being silent by going to therapy and pretty much airing his dirty laundry in order to get help. Which did help him. And that, with time and perseverance and therapy, it really helped him understand that he wasn't alone in this world of anxiety. Throughout this conversation, he shares so many amazing analogies that really just help anyone, whether you have mental health challenges or not, really understand what the experience is like. And he shares like a few different, sayings and phrases that during the experience would really help him keep hope that things would get better, hopes that things would change, hope that these feelings would pass. This entire conversation was just so inspiring. Connecting with Dimitri was just it was so fun.
Yes.
He is an excellent storyteller and a great speaker. And, sharing all this, he still is able to have this positive outlook and help make sense of the experience, not only for himself, but for everyone that's listening. I just really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Same. I mean, yeah, we could have talked to Dimitri for like 10 more years.
Yeah.
It felt like connecting with an old friend, right?
Yes.
Like someone we've known for decades and that we could put our that we could share things that we're dealing with and be seen and heard and not judged and be loved and supported. That's what this conversation felt like for us warriors. And we know that we can't imagine that you'll feel any different than we do. So without further ado, here's the show. Welcome back, warriors.
Yay.
We are so stoked to be on with an amazing guest today. His name is Dimitri Colbert. Welcome to the show, Dimitri.
Hello, everyone. Thank you both for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks.
We are so excited. before we hit record, we were just gushing over the fact that Dimitri reached out to us on our YouTube channel. I think you were our first comment on any of our episodes on YouTube. And he reached out to be a guest on the show. And God, we are just so honored to have you, a true live listener who was like, yes, I want to be part of that community. And it truly means the world to Abby and myself. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So we're just going to dive right in, Dimitri. Share with our listeners a little bit about how anxiety has shown up in your life.
Sure. Anxiety first reared its ugly head when I was 18, freshman in college in Virginia. And I was a college football player as well, and everything was going well. And then kaboom, it slapped me across the face. And it stayed. It wasn't just a slap that you get better after a while, or you heal up, or you put a little steak on it and your face feels better. No, it occupied a lot of space in my mind for a long time. Initially, it started with panic attacks. There was school going on, of course, full workload and football and everything else. But also, I couldn't get myself to just focus on one thing. I started focusing on another thing, and then everything, and then all things at all the time. And I was like, what's going on here? What's happening? So that's where I initially struggled. Or that was where it started. That was the inception there. And I couldn't get rid of it. It started off, relatively frequently, and then it became an all day, every day kind of thing from sun up to sundown. And that's when I knew something was awry. So there was a problem there. I didn't know what that problem was though, but I just knew that there was an issue. So that's how it started. I was 18, playing football in Virginia and having a great time, and and life was a lollipop. And all of a sudden, then after a while, it started to taste like sauerkraut. So yeah.
Wow.
I love these metaphors. Yeah. I never know if it's an analogy or a metaphor. You'll have to teach me this.
I just thought of that one. That one just came out of the air.
It starts with lollipop and ends in sauerkraut.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm so curious. So during that time, right? Like in college, we're still kids. I know we think we're a little bit more grown up, but our brains aren't fully developed. So here you're living the life, having a lollipop, and then all of a sudden things start to go sour. What are you telling yourself during this? What are your peers saying? What's coming up?
Right. So that's an excellent question. I told no one, didn't want anyone to know. I was extremely ashamed, I'll say. And even before I even knew that it was anxiety, I just knew something was not right or not regular, quote unquote. So I kept to myself. I didn't say really anything to anyone. My really good friends at that school that were also freshman football players, they started to understand and see that I was changing and not going out as much, not interacting as much. As you can see, I have the gift of gab. I talk too much as it is. And at that time, I wasn't talking at all. I was very quiet, and I wanted to get in and out of places, and I didn't go to a lot of places anymore. So essentially, I became a shell of myself, and I preferred to be. It was weird. I wanted to be alone because I wanted to kind of decipher and figure out what it was that I was going through. But also, I yearned for someone else to understand me, but I didn't understand. So I didn't know what to say to someone else for them to, also be able to relate. So it was a really, really dark, really tough time. I mean, I was a football player, so I was eating everything and lifting weights and all this kind of stuff. I lost 25 pounds in less than 3 months, and and that's when my friends kind of were like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, oh no, I'm switching. I was lying. I'm switching from being a defensive back a defensive end and a linebacker to a wide receiver. That's why I'm losing. That's why I'm cutting weight, bro. That's why I'm cutting weight, bro. But really, that was not it at all. I was trying to find me again because I had completely lost me. I wasn't sure what was going on, and it was a rough time there, and that's kind of how it first manifested itself and showed itself to me. Was around that time where I was just anxious all the time and didn't know why and for what, and my brain was going a mile a minute at all times.
Wow. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. there's like, I always say this every time, because at the beginning of the story, I'm like, oh, how a million things, right? But I just want to highlight something that you said, right? You were in college, usually we're like pretty healthy, in our late teens, early 20s, right?
Sure.
And you said you were eating well, you were exercising, and yet you were having this anxiety. And I think that that's something really important to acknowledge, because sometimes I hear the message, oh, if you eat better and exercise more, your mental health is better. Right. And it can help. Eating healthy and exercise can help your mental health, but it doesn't mean it like just clears it up. Right. And so I appreciate you sharing that part about you were physically healthy, but that doesn't mean that it means we're all mentally healthy,
Exactly. Excuse me. So I have to kind of just repurpose that just for a second. I left a portion of it out. So I guess I could say the catalyst for this whole thing was that I was in college, okay, and I go to a party, and I was already starting to feel anxious. And when it first slapped me, I was like, hey, it's just one of those days where you just don't feel right. And then a couple of days later, I went to a party, and then we had a few drinks, and then I actually smoked a little bit of cannabis, and that really threw everything into overdrive. So from then on, from that particular time on, everything was amplified, and it was it was chaos essentially. So that was part of the problem there. Not necessarily what just because I was smoking weed or whatever the case may be. I'm 18, we're in college, but it was that extra experience of just, what's going on around me? I should think about this right now. I should worry about that. And what about those people there? I should worry about them too. And then so that's when it really spiraled, was at that point.
Yes. And I actually know someone with a similar story where they were like 18, 19, and after smoking, they started to have a lot more anxiety and panic.
Right.
Before.
And it's so true. And so I know someone personally that went through the same thing almost around the same time, went to the same school, and she actually hated my guts then at that point in time, because I was really good. And if you're hearing this, Heather, I love you, and it's okay. And I know you said it's okay, but I can say your name if I want to. So she didn't like me because I was dating her roommate, and then she thought I was kind of a playboy or whatever I was trying to So anyway, neither here nor there. Excuse me. So she didn't like me then, and then I didn't find out about her situation until almost a year and a half later. She randomly sent me a this is when I'm in the throes of it. I'm really going through it. I left school, went back home, and she sent me a Facebook direct message at like 11 p.m. and she's like, hey, and I was like, I thought you hated my guts. Oh, hello. And I was gonna fake the funk because that's what I did at that time. I didn't want anyone to know what I was going through. I didn't want to explain it because I couldn't really explain it or properly anyway. So I didn't want to talk about it. And she broke down all that barrier, the glass, everything else or whatever. She said to me initially, right then and there, she's like, hey, I left school around the same time too. I did because I started having panic attacks and anxiety a lot. And I said, what? Excuse me? Are you kidding? And so then we spoke, and we're the best of friends now. She's actually one of the main characters in the book that I just recently wrote. And but that was she was one of the people that really helped me a lot, because there was a relation there. Like, hey, this is what you have. This is what you're going through, and what I'm going through. It was similar in that respect. So I owe a lot to her, and I know she said many times that she owes a lot to me, but I feel like I owe her way more. Yeah.
You found that person that understood.
It was like an angel dropping out of the sky. It was at the perfect time too. It was at the perfect time. Yeah.
That you didn't need to explain your experience because you were talking to someone that didn't allow you to even, right? That she just, by being herself and sharing herself with you, right, it just immediately shattered any kind of walls that you had built up around your experience with anxiety.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say too, Dimitri, like aside from the weed part, I can relate. I mean, I did plenty of drinking, but I can relate so hard to your experience in so many ways. It's amazing because I also connected to the fact that I was an anxious person when I was 18, when I was a freshman in college. It is a huge part of my anxiety warrior origin story.
Sure.
And so I just felt a lot of full body chills just listening to you recount that experience, because I have such a visceral memory of being that exact age and not truly understanding my experience. And, the way it happened for me, you categorize your moment as a slap in the face. And so it kind of felt like that to me, but because somebody on the outside of me noticed that I was experiencing a panic attack without me having that knowledge or language,
Right.
and offered me that in the moment. I was in the middle of a final exam when I had my proverbial slap in the face.
Right. Right.
And so, and then I had a long conversation with that total stranger after the fact, and things, developed from there. And I wound up being like, oh, I have had anxiety my whole life and I just didn't know what it was.
Sure.
And so I'm curious, and maybe you don't really remember, maybe it's something you've blocked, but like, what was the proverbial slap in the face? Cause like you described, that originally it kind of was infrequent and like was here and there, and then it became an all day, everyday thing. So like,
Right.
is there like a visceral memory like there was for me of like, this was that aha moment, this was that thing that I realized this was like, even without knowing this is anxiety, which obviously you learn that in the rear view, right?
Right.
When you were talking to this person, this now one of your best friends.
Sure.
But like, if you could reflect back on it, can you pinpoint a time, or was it just that you started to notice that you were changing?
I can actually, and that's a great question. I haven't really thought about this for a very long time. I was in my walking into my dorm, and at this college, there were male dorms and then female dorms, right? So I walking into my dorm, and I just I believe I think it was intro to psychology, it was some class like that. And so I'm walking into my dorm, and I go up the stairs. I'm going to my room, and I'm getting a phone call. And I can't, so I started having like just so many different thoughts, like, oh, I got a paper due at this time, I have this to do, oh, I got to go to the quad and hang out with my friends, oh, then I have to go back, and then I have to go to practice, then I have to do. And so everything started to, before I could really chronologically put one thing here, there, I'll get to you when I get to you, but everything was what I needed to focus on and think about at that time. And so then I finally get in my room, and then my dad's calling me, and he lives in Atlanta, and he's calling me, and he's being a dad. Hey, how's school going? You meet any cool girls? You meet any whatever. And I'm listening to him, but I'm not hearing him at all. I am so shout out to Will Ferrell. I'm in a glass case of emotion, and I don't really and I don't want to be on the phone with him at all, because I don't know what's going on, and I can't focus properly. So that was the moment that I knew there was really something going on, because usually relatively good listener and things of that nature. And I just, everything just kind of flowed, for the most part. But then everything was just erratic and chaos. And I was like, why can't I put my thoughts, together? Why can't I get myself together, for lack of a better term? And that's when I knew something was up. That was the first time that I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. It was then in my dorm room at I think it was C202 was the room, if I'm not mistaken. So long ago, but I still remember.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just find like we all have an origin story, right? And sometimes you have visceral memories, and sometimes they kind of blend together and then we're muddled. But I always appreciate getting some of those like nitty gritty details about those moments. They can be really powerful memories, and hopefully not too triggering. And I apologize if it was.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Good. Okay, great. All right. So I'd love to hear more. You shared a little bit about, certainly at this time in your life, right? How anxiety kind of manifested itself in you physically, in your overwhelming thoughts, right? Just like thinking about the pile on of stuff you had to do, and your behaviors and how it changed your behaviors in many ways. And so like, either if you can speak more about how it shows up, how it manifested physically in you and in your mind, body, and behaviors. And maybe you want to bring it into today, even a little bit, like how does it still continue to show up in you?
Absolutely. Initially, back then, it was the cold sweats for me. It was the sweats for me, early and often, and to the point where I'm like, I'm looking at the back of the stick of deodorant, like there's some ingredient missing in here because
yes, why doesn't it work for me?
exactly. Like, hold on, like, is this knockoff deodorant because it's not working anymore? But the sweating of the palms, the forehead sweating, that was a big thing and always prevalent, especially when I was going through my bouts of anxiety. And well, even before the panic attacks started, I could feel that labored breathing, like, well, usually, I'm a deep breather, but now everything's kind of short and choked up, and I wasn't sure, and I could feel it, and just from a sense of like, I guess the best way I can describe it is if you get the chills from something, right? I would get the chills, and they would be there for a second and then gone, and then back and then gone. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? So that's when I really started to, see that something wasn't right at the time. So in bringing that into kind of now, so, and thank goodness that I've come through a lot of that, and don't really have to deal with that too much anymore. The most that I deal with now is just trying to chronologically put those thoughts, like, okay, I can worry about that later. Don't worry about it now. But the thing that still, I believe, kind of resonates, excuse me, is that I will, if I have a few things that I'm thinking about or things that I have to get done, every now and again, I'll start to get that sweating back, in the forehead, and it'll just be in the forehead, which is why I really appreciate you guys saying you might send a headband. That'll be all. That would be more than cool. That would be effective.
We'll make sure it's like an absorbent one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the forehead sweat is still kind of, a thing every now and again. But I don't have, knock on the biggest piece of wood, but I don't have any panic attacks anymore, and haven't for a good while, thankfully. And I think a lot of that's because I learned not just how to fight with anxiety, but when to fight, and when to follow. Yeah. So not just when to lead the battle, but when to follow. So I think that's helped out a lot as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I love talking with you. Like, I love the way you share your story, because first of all, like, I'm there with you, right? Like, I've definitely looked at my deodorant, right?
Right.
But I've never consciously looked at it, right?
Right.
Like, I've been like, wait, is this antiperspirant or is it, and like,
Right.
I mean, but just the way you tell these details, I'm like, I am there with you, right? Like, and so I just appreciate it. You're an excellent storyteller, like giving the details and painting the picture. One of the questions I have is because you mentioned it in the beginning of your story, like when you started to feel off, when you noticed like things were happening, whether you had the label or not of anxiety, you also were feeling ashamed.
Absolutely.
And I feel like shame is something that manifests from anxiety, right? Like, I feel like a lot of us are like, what's wrong with me? I can't tell other people my experience. I need to hide it. I'm ashamed of my behaviors that anxiety is causing me to do.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if you'll share a little bit more about the shame piece, because I think I feel like shame goes so hand in hand with anxiety, but I feel like we haven't given enough like talk around that piece. Like Margot and I did one episode where we talked about anxiety and shame, and a lot of our guests like kind of mention it, but they don't really get into how shame shows up with anxiety. So how like anxiety also manifests shame.
Right. So I equate shame with, I don't know, I put it with pride. And I think they're a synonym from time to time, at least for me. And I had way too much pride at the time. And so that pride led to even more shame, because I'm seeing every day everyone that's like me, my friends that are, also going to school and things like that, I don't see them dealing with these things, right? I didn't care to ask. I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to know, the answer of like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm not, I didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll leave that question in the back pocket forever. I'll never ask you, So the shame was that I'm a kid who has a lot of great things going on, a lot of good things in my life. And I'm so fortunate in so many different ways, way more fortunate than a lot of people in certain respects. And what am I worried about? And and I felt shame in that, like shame on you for even worrying about whatever it is that you have to worry about. Like there are people who have real problems. Like at that time, I called them real problems.
Yeah.
Who have, that are going on with their anxiety. Trust me, folks, anxiety is a real problem. It's a real thing. So. But at that time, I didn't even know what it was. But I didn't, but so I really, I felt a lot of shame. And also because I didn't want to speak to anyone about it. So I didn't know enough about it. I didn't have enough knowledge on it to even know, not even to where to attack, but what even it is. It's hard to fight an enemy that you don't even know, what it looks like or what it is or how it moves or how it thinks or whatever the case. So, and also I will say this, as a Black male, I have a very loving, very understanding family, very much so, which I'm sure that a lot of people do. In our community especially, but also everyone else's community as well. I've spoken to a lot of people about this over the years. We don't really believe in therapy, okay? We don't really talk about therapy. We don't talk about mental health because it's just not one of the things that we've ever spoken about. I mean, I remember one time, this is years ago, but after I had, kind of understood a little bit about what anxiety is, my grandmother, I was talking to her about it, and sweet Pearl Ann Hines, and she's like, well, baby, what are you going through? And I'm like, well, Granny, it's a lot of things. It's this, that, and the other. She was like, and I told her, I was like, hey, well, I'm going to therapy now and things like that. She's like, oh, she took a big gasp. And I was like, oh, are you okay? She said, oh, you're going to tell a stranger about your problems? She was like, who does that? We don't do that. Why are you going to tell a stranger your business? And I had to, I did laugh at her, but after the fact, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, old way of thinking and how I thought too. When I was young, when I was 18, 19, that's what I thought. That's how I thought. That's what I knew. So that's what really bottled up and kept that shame and kept it in my right pocket for a very long time. And it made, me getting better and progressing and recovering. It made it a lot longer than it had to be, I believe, because I carried shame everywhere I went before I even picked up my wallet. So that was one thing there.
Wow. Oof.
I mean, just the fact that like you broke the cycle. You were like, no, I am going to talk to a stranger about what's going on is like huge. Like, I mean, you telling that story where you're sharing with your grandmother, it brought tears to my eyes because you've gotten this message, and I think it is pretty common. I know a lot of people are given the message, like, you don't need therapy. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Just get it together. It's like, dying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you keep your dirty laundry to yourself, right? That was the message.
Exactly. Yeah. And I felt that, just really quickly, I felt that from my father as well, and it wasn't, he wasn't trying to purposefully make me feel that way, but he's a career military guy. And he was in the Marines for, 20 or 30 years or so. And when I tried to explain to him what was going on or what I was going through, he's like, what? Just essentially, for lack of a better term, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and and just right. That's all he knew. That's his mindset. That's how he was raised as well, and things of that nature. And but yeah, this is also coming from a guy who said he never had a dream a day in his life or a headache. So I'm like, well, Dad, I don't believe either one of those things. So,
he just didn't attach any memory to those things, or he's pushed them down in a way.
We've had many arguments about that over the years. And he's holding, close to his vest. I'm holding to mine. So, but yeah, so it was also coming from there. So that also brought me, or made me feel, more shame, was because I'm like, oh man, and of course somebody that you want to be like your dad. And I'm like, oh man, I want to be like my dad, but Dad, I don't I don't think these things are what you have or whatever, or what you experience or what have you. So it made the road a little more arduous for sure, and a little harder, a little tougher.
Yeah.
So
I love the line that you draw between shame and pride, because
Yes.
I felt that very deeply myself. I had not really drawn that line myself. So thank you for drawing it for me, because
sure.
I feel like a lot of warriors can relate to the idea of like, I need to project strength, right? I need to
Mhm.
project strength in my day to day for my kids, for my spouse, for my coworkers, in my community,
Mhm.
in all the places, even as young as 18, even as young as 3 and 5, right? Like there's so many responsibilities and things that are being put on our shoulders as human beings in this difficult world.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're so used to, from a young age, learning that we need to be strong and we can be all the things all the time and to everyone, and serve and serve and serve, and don't take for yourself. Right. And so
Right.
when you choose to break that cycle, when you choose to say, no, I need to figure out what's going on with me. I don't believe there's something wrong with me at the root, and I need to work on it. Right. And so, like, with that, so thank you for making that, just that line, drawing that line between those two things, because I do feel like they are wrapped up in each other.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just as Abby said, I want to echo again, just like how brave it is for you to break that cycle and be an example for members of your family. And you have a young baby yourself, right? And so, like,
Sure.
knowing that as your child grows, they're going to see like, hey, my dad believes that mental health shouldn't be stigmatized. My
Right.
dad's listening to me, right? He genuinely cares about caring for himself. And like,
Mhm.
there's no better model for children than that. So yeah. Just so powerful.
Definitely.
All right. So Dimitri, talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that you choose to cope with your anxiety in general, in the past, these days. Like, what are some of the go-to strategies? Obviously, you've talked a little bit about therapy. You can share more on that, or just anything else that helps you out in the day-to-day, or when you kind of notice those moments or those spikes returning.
Right. So I'll say then, when it was really, really bad, my younger years, if you will, the 18, 19, early 20s, all the way up to like mid 20s, I I would try to watch sports, even though that wasn't that great. I would watch funny videos, or let's say a comedian, right, do stand up, even one that I'd seen before that I knew that I used to laugh at. I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. But while I'm going through it, I'm not thinking that. I'm like, I'm feeling so down, right? I I had to fake it until I made it on that. I would laugh at things that I know that I used to laugh at before, even when it didn't feel funny to me in the moment. Because I said, I have to find a way to get back to me. And I know me, I used to love that movie, or I used to love that stand-up, or I used to, so I'm gonna ha ha ha, I'm gonna laugh, even though all I want to do is all I want to do is cry. I'm gonna laugh right now. And then I thought, like, if I do that consistently, at the time, this is my mindset. If I do that consistently and then do the things I used to love, even though I don't want to do them at all, albeit, sports or whatever, but also with comedy, sooner or later, and hopefully those bridges will merge, and I'll be able to get back across to where I want to be. So I was like, okay, it's not funny to me right now, but I knew it was before, so I'm going to laugh right now, and I'm going to do these things that I used to do because I thought it was very it was necessary at the time, and so that's what I was doing then. But also what I started doing around that time is and this was, I think, right before or during when I first started going to therapy. I started saying almost on a daily basis, like, this too shall pass.
Yes.
Yes.
This too shall pass. And coming from with my family, and growing up in the church, and I didn't go to church all the time. I did, whenever Granny, raised that eyebrow, I was like, all right, let me put on my church shoes. I'm going, But so, that's one thing I kept remembering. There was two things. That one thing was like, this too shall pass. So I said, okay, whatever this is, aka anxiety, this anxiety shall pass. So I would get a little bit of courage, a little bit of hope from that. Also, I would I also would think about this phrase, trouble don't last always.
Ooh.
And so in it, it's also a gospel song, from a really famous gospel song actually from years ago. And it's trouble don't last always. I'm like, okay, I'm in trouble right now.
Yeah.
But it can't last always. It can't. So that gave me a little bit of hope, a little bit of courage as well. So I would, I would put, one phrase on one knuckle and one phrase on the other, and I would, that was my day. I would go through my day kind of running and rerunning those two things through my head with whatever I was doing. And that's what helped me get through some days. So
yeah. So I love that. Like, this too shall pass is it's so powerful, because when you're in it, it feels like it's not going to end. It's like horrible.
Absolutely.
Right. And so to just keep having that, right? Like, it's like that affirmation that reminds you, like, it will pass, might come back again, but it will pass, this moment will pass. I'm super curious, at what age did you start therapy? And when you started therapy, did you know you had anxiety, or was it the therapist that told you it was anxiety?
Excuse me. Excellent question. I started therapy when I was 21, maybe, or right before I turned, right before I turned 21. I didn't, if you would have asked me then what I had going on, what was going on with me, I would have had 27 different things to tell you, because I fell prey to what most people do when they first start experiencing some mental health difficulties. I ran to Google and I said, and I smacked my keyboard with these fingers every single day. It seemed like, trying to find out, what is going on and how to, get through what I'm going through, or whatever the case may be. And then a lot of the times it was horror stories. And I'm like, oh my God, is it that? Is it that? Could it be that? Or whatever. And so that was not the best thing to do at that point in time. But yeah, so that's what I did for a while. Then I did start going to therapy, and I knew what anxiety was at that point, excuse me. I didn't know exactly too much about it, but I guess I knew enough to get by. So that's when I first figured out that it was anxiety. I think it was that they initially said it was generalized anxiety disorder or something, or what have you. And I was like, hey, doc, let me tell you something. Nothing about this is general. Okay.
Right. Don't generalize my experience, person.
No disrespect to your PhD and all your years of schooling, but nothing about this is general.
Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah. So that was when around 2021. Yeah. When I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of our former guests, Karen Schock, called herself Dr. Google. And so when you just said that, I'm like, Dr. Google, like, it can be a rabbit hole you fall down.
Absolutely.
Just researching every possible problem that, your one symptom could be related to.
Yeah. Google should have a tagline, like, if you have anxiety, don't Google this.
Don't do this.
Seriously.
Just go to a doctor. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Exit stage left. For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a giant flashing red stop sign.
Yeah.
If you could describe your relationship to anxiety, how would you describe it?
How would I describe it now or back then in the okay.
Let's go with now.
Now, I would say I would say a kind of a pesky, annoying friend. Yeah. Yeah, I would say a pesky friend, Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Some friends are pesky.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit annoying.
Exactly.
We tolerate them, right?
Like, no, you can't have my Netflix password. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's a boundary. That's a boundary.
Exactly.
All right. Perfect. If you could kind of flash back in time, maybe speak to that 18-year-old version of yourself, Dimitri, what kind of advice would you offer him?
I would tell him, relax and sit back and relax, maybe, because this is going to take a little while. This is going to take a little while. This is this is not a microwavable dinner. This anxiety thing. This is something that you got to put in the oven. right? And this is going to take some time to rise, right? You're down low now, but you're going to rise again. It's okay. Take your time. And also, I would tell that way more handsome, cooler guy back then. I would say that to stop judging your progress with a clock. That was one of the worst things that I did that took me, it really set me back for a very, very long time, because I would say, look, if I don't feel better by next month, then something's definitely really, really wrong. Or, or this year, or if I don't, if I'm not back in school by this time, then, or, this time, that set me back, because what happens is you're not where you want to be at that time. When you give yourself that deadline, then you feel horrible. Then you feel even worse than than you were feeling already. Right. So it's a trap. It's a trick. So I really started progressing and getting better and feeling better when I started. I started saying, well, actually, I'll say this. Okay. I started using this word differently and putting it in a different place in my sentence. Until. I started using until properly, and then that's what kind of the light bulb came on. And I was like, hey, if I can just say until, so like, all right, so if I'm dealing with this anxiety, then how long am I going to deal with this? Until I get over this, or whether it be depression or anything else, like how, like what will I do? I will do what I have to do until I get through this or whatever. And I started thinking about that a lot and started living like that, actually. That until mentality, as I call it, and everything started to change from there. I was like, oh shoot, this word is a lot more powerful than I thought. Are you telling me that I can do anything now? I can really get over anything? Because I took time off of it. I don't care if it's next month or next year when I start feeling better or what have you. Then hold on, you're trying to tell me I can't lose then? Exactly. That's what really helped.
I mean, first of all, I wish that like every 18-year-old could hear your advice. Like, I mean, the whole entire thing, like from the first word you said, which was relax, like the moment you said that, like my body was like, oh yeah. Right. Yep. Like, I feel like so many anxiety warriors always have that bit of tension in their body, always ready. Right. And it's like, no, relax. Right. And then you went from like microwavable dinner to the oven, and it's like brilliant. Just like brilliant, because we are in this like fast food, like Amazon package within a couple hours mentality, where we apply that not only to when we're going to get a package or when we're going to get our food, but also to our mental health. And it's like, no, some things take time.
Absolutely.
Right. And
often then, the best things. Yes.
Right. Our mental health, like it takes time. Right. And at 18, 19, 20, like we're just in such a different headspace. So just that advice is just brilliant. And then just like the reframing of this word until, right? Like, I mean,
it was perfect.
I just wish especially like at 18, because 18 is really hard. That's a hard age. 18, 19, 20, 21. You're like asked to behave like an adult and think about your future. And yet you have all this pressure on you. And yet you are still a kid.
Absolutely.
Right. And so your advice is just beautiful and heart touching, and I love all of your analogies and metaphors. Like,
for real, honestly,
I'm gonna, listen to this a million times and write them all down. They're so
right. I feel like you that's your next book, I guess.
Right.
Just
So the first one, it's called Until.
Okay. Well, we'll hear all about that in just a few. But my goodness, the whole time you were talking to, so similar to what Abby was saying, I'm just like, if you wanted to start a church, like, Church of Dimitri, like I would be a congregant there, because that's a church I can get behind, just morally.
We have snacks and Slurpees at every sermon.
Absolutely. It's getting better. Okay, cool. Can we bring snacks? I'm going to bring cookies and tacos, Oh, wow. I mean,
a free headband, right? Like,
right.
Just,
I gained you entry, the headband.
But like Abby said too, it's just like, and as you said, why are we just live in a rushed mindset all the time too. And I kept thinking of like everything you were sharing was about sit back, relax. And of course, my brain went to enjoy the show, throw back to the 90s. Yeah. But, I just feel like, why can't we all the time practice remembering that we don't need to rush through anything, right? And as you were saying, it's like when you're 18, especially, we're not rushing to become adults. We're not rushing to fix life. I mean, we're trying to feel it all and experience it all and just get through the best way we can. So I just love that advice. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So final question before we get into some lightning round fun.
Hey-o.
Yes. So excited. My favorite part of every episode. What does being an anxiety warrior mean to you?
What does being an anxiety warrior mean to me? I wrote something down, but I don't even, I won't even go to that. I will just say that being an anxiety warrior to me is it's really around your mentality. It means you being, or me, excuse me, being a person that I'm not afraid of fear anymore, right? Because people can be afraid, but to be afraid of fear is a whole nother bucket to jump into. Being an anxiety warrior is that I'm prepared to fight any battle, but also prepared to think my way through a battle as well. There have been many battles that have been started and ended with the right words, the right verbiage. So that's how I look at my anxiety. I'm like, hey, if I think about the right way, to go about this, or the right word to think about or to use in this case, then I can start and stop a lot of wars before they even get going. So yeah.
So good. So good. Yeah. I mean, full body chills.
Yeah.
Full body chills. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
It is time for lightning round.
I got to switch my hat. Okay.
Yes, a separate hat for lightning round, I guess. Yeah. That's so funny. Lightning. Okay. So Abby and I are going to go back and forth and just ask you a few fun, just a handful of get to know you type questions. You do not need to rush. You can take that long pause, take a deep breath, consider your answer, and just answer in your own time. Okay. And it's just a kind of a nice, fun, playful way that we like to end our sometimes heavy conversations that we have about our mental health and anxiety specifically. So, all right, Abby, I'm going to go first today.
Oh boy. Okay. I hope you're not going to ask what I want to ask.
Oh, well, that's good. You know what? Last time you jumped it, so I'm jumping it this week.
You jump it. Okay. You jump it. All right.
Okay. Yeah. We never plan like who's going first. And so it's like basically whoever shouts it out. I'm like,
yeah. And we never know what the other one's going to ask either. So
that's right. We don't share with each other until the episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Love it.
So in our pre-interview exchanges, Dimitri, you had shared that you loved The Office. This is why. And so sometimes we use those questions that we ask you in the pre-interview against you during lightning round, or with you, not really against you. It's just like, hey, we learned a little tidbit and we want our audience to hear more about it. So you are looking at and speaking to two huge Office nerds. We can literally spend a whole podcast talking about this show, and we've quoted it many times on the show. So this question, you could either choose one or the other. Who's your favorite character and why, or which character do you most relate to and why?
Excellent. My favorite character is Creed Bratton. Creed Bratton is just, this guy's a legend. Will always and forever be a legend. Anybody who sprouts mung beans at their desk.
Smell like death.
Yes, is a legend. I love Creed Bratton. I most relate to Jim, I guess I would say, and that's actually my girlfriend and I. That's how we connected, was through the show The Office. That's we just started just throwing out like just
Mung beans?
quotes from The Office. Yeah,
Sprouting quotes.
Yeah, sprouting quotes. Yeah, we started throwing out quotes, and then all of a sudden we kind of looked at each other like, I like you
Yes.
a lot. And so yeah. Anyway.
Follow-up question.
Mhm.
If I can't scuba, what's this all been about? Just kidding. Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Classic.
Well, I'm staying in the Office theme, and I'm still asking my question.
Let's do it.
No one said you
Okay.
didn't, that you shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I know.
fair to
I know.
myself.
We're just officing it, you know.
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's
So
my favorite day ever.
I mean, I watch The Office to alleviate anxiety, you know, even though it gives
I
me a
do as
little
well.
anxiety, but
Some episodes. I know what episode everyone's thinking right now.
Dinner party?
Scott's Tots for
Oh,
me.
Scott's Tots.
We
Okay.
just- okay.
Okay.
I'll let you ask the question, then I have one thing to go back to that.
Okay. So if you had to have one of the characters in The Office be your roommate and your coworker,
Mm-hmm.
who would it be? But you can't choose Jim.
Probably Daryl.
Oh yeah.
That'd be Daryl.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's super organized too. as you learn,
Exactly.
and
That's-
Yes.
There we go.
right.
All
Exactly.
right.
He'd be a good roommate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
agreed.
yeah, he's not super involved at work, so he'd
Right.
give you
Laid
space
back.
at work. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
He's
Just
got his
cool
own
guy.
office,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What were you going to say about?
Oh, I was going to say how weird that was that you said that about Scott's Tots. Literally last night, because we watch, I don't know, at least 2 episodes every other day. It seems like it's just to kind of cool down from the day and things like that. So my girlfriend and I, we always, we pop it on and we're watching The Office, and we got to Scott's Tots, and she was making dinner, and I was playing with my son in the living room, and she came out of the kitchen and she's like, no. I was like, what? And I already knew what she was going to say, because she hates that episode because it makes her so anxious. She hates Scott's Tots because she feels so bad and cringy about it. So we had
the worst one.
Scott's Tots.
It is
Yeah.
She's correct.
Yeah.
She is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Okay. Let's see.
All right.
I'm gonna move on from The Office.
Mhm,
I could ask
mhm.
more Office questions, but I won't.
Sure.
You also mentioned that I think you used the words karaoke legend.
Man, we are gonna ask the same questions this time.
You better come out. You better have your backup list, girl.
Yeah,
Okay.
you better have your
So
backup.
let's hear your favorite karaoke song, and then you got to sing us a couple bars. Like you can't
How
put
dare
legend.
you? So I'm sorry. Well, if I would have known this was going to happen, I would have gotten a couple of cups of hot tea. Okay. Maybe with a little honey, maybe
You got
even,
this.
but so can't remember the name, but I think I know a few of the lyrics. Seeing your picture on the covers of magazines, from them covers to my covers, wanna lay with me. Okay, that's all you get. Okay.
Woo!
All right.
That was more than enough. Well done.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, my question was going to be, what is like a guilty pleasure song that you would be embarrassed singing at karaoke?
That is a good one. A guilty.
You have to love it.
I have to love it.
It's like super corny.
Oh gosh. I usually don't let super corny songs enter my ears. No, I'm just drawing a blank here. I'm not sure. That's a really good question. Can I pass that?
You can. What about maybe there's like a song that your son loves listening to and you're like, oh, that's terrible, but it's super catchy?
Okay. Excellent. I can get to that one.
Yeah.
Literally any and every song that's on the movie Sing 2. And it's the only thing that calms him down. And we listen to it like 7 times a day.
Yeah.
And I cry inside.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Cry.
rough. It's
Yeah.
gotta be so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. Yeah.
Soul crushing. It sounds soul crushing.
Right.
Okay. All right. My final question.
Okay.
What skill do you think that everyone everywhere should have?
Everyone everywhere should have. Excellent question. Humility.
Yes.
And so can I build off that just for a second?
Of course.
Yeah, please.
Okay, just for a quick second. So this is like 7 years ago-ish or so. I am on my lunch break at work. This is when I'm living in Charlotte and working downtown. No, that was a different time. That was 7 years ago. But anyway, it was a little while back. And I'm going into Publix to get lunch. They've got relatively decent hot food. So I was like, let me go to Publix. So I'm going in, and they have the 2 doors. You can go in one way or the other way. Both are the sliding doors, right? And I'm walking in, and I see there were like 2 or 3 people in front of me. And they automatically, all of them, it was almost like they were a tandem team. They all shift and go hard right and go to the others, all the way to the other side of the door to go in. I'm like, what is there something on the ground that I'm missing? What is going on? And I see there's a homeless guy on this side. He's standing against the wall, the brick wall. And he has just a book bag. And I'm going to say, a less fortunate individual. He's just standing there against the wall. And I'm like, oh man. And I see the look on his face when he sees everyone walk to the, to the other side. And he knows it's because of him, and he's just like the sadness that he felt. I was like, oh man, it hurt me. I was like, oh man, that I felt that. And so I walk straight up to him, and I talked to him for a second or two, and he doesn't say anything for a little while. He inhales deeply and exhales really deeply, almost to the point where I'm like, oh, you okay, bud, or whatever. And I was like, you all right, man? And he's like, thank you. And he said, thank you. And I said, for what? He didn't ask for any money. I didn't give him any money. I didn't have any money. I had, a card, I was going to use. So, and he said, thank you. And I said, why? And he said, thank you for acknowledging my humanity.
Yeah.
I swear that's what he said to me. That's the only thing that he said right then. Yeah. And it threw me for a loop. It messed up the rest of my day. I went back to work and got absolutely no work done.
Yeah.
I thought the rest of the day about that guy. And when I came out of the Publix, I just got, a couple of Gatorades and little, things for him or whatever. And he just, we shook hands, and then we hugged, and whatever the case may be. And the amount of, I don't even know what the right word for it is, but what I felt in that moment and how I felt for him, then felt with him in that moment, I was like, oh man, we got to do better in terms of people, just as humans. I was like, this guy is just another human. He's just like you and I. And, I'm not sure about some people, but I'm not more than, 4 missed paychecks away from being simple. You know what I mean? So just humility. And I so that's essentially what skill I would hope everyone would have.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, just such
beautiful.
like a beautiful but tragic story. It's like all these, forgotten people that it's just easier for people to ignore than to see, because it's so uncomfortable imagining, being in that position. It's awful.
Yeah.
I love that. That would be a nice skill for everyone to have. It'd be a nicer world to be in for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. It would be a gift, really. Right.
Yeah.
For everyone to be able to just be able to be more human to fellow humans, to behave as if that could be you.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so true. So, wow. Thank you. What a beautiful skill. I wish for that too.
Yes.
For everyone, for humanity. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, my last question. What am I gonna do? Margot, you should have gone second. That was such a good one.
Thank you, Margot.
So what is something that you've always wanted to do but you haven't done yet?
Ooh, really good question. Something that wow. I don't know. I would say skydive, but everybody says skydive. Like it's
but you're
not me.
Yeah, Margot wouldn't say it.
Everybody says skydive. You're on an anxiety podcast.
Oh, that's true.
I don't know. You may be underestimating some of the scared listeners that we have.
I have done skydiving twice, so
Oh,
We're on
wow.
both
Okay.
different ends of the, so that's a good one. I support that one.
Yeah.
I support it.
You guys support it.
I
So
support other people doing it.
that's something that I would have never said until like a year ago, from a year ago until now.
Interesting.
Because even before a year ago, even the thought of that entering my mind would be like a problem. I'd be like, oh my God, like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, I even didn't like the movie that Denzel made, Flight, where, that when it first came out, after a while, I didn't fly for a little while. I'm like, look, you know what? This is a road trip we're gonna go on,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. But yeah, it'd be skydiving.
All right. I love it.
We'll check back in a few months, maybe you'll have already done it.
For sure. Yeah. We shall see.
Amazing. Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Dimitri, for getting down in the mud and playing with us for a few minutes here towards the end of our conversation. I'm sad to see it ending. It's been such a joy and an honor and a pleasure. But before we have you share with our listeners a little bit more about where they can connect with you, anything like you have your book coming out, we'd like to ask all of our guests to share a win of the week. It could be something from this week or just something recently that's felt like a win, big or small.
Right. So the the platforms that I'm on really quickly, Instagram, Fight the Flight FTF, all one word, Fight the Flight FTF. Also recently started the YouTube channel, that's Fight the Flight YT, if I'm not mistaken, from YouTube. But you can find the link in my Instagram description anyway, as well, where I mostly just do motivational voiceovers for for all people, and the book not out quite yet, but it'll be available, and it'll be on the same platforms where you'll be able to get them there. So a recent win. Let's see. Okay. A recent win is I just finished another motivational voiceover that I did, and it'll be dropping tonight. So really cool. Yeah, and it was a little tricky because my son's birthday was this past week, or Saturday actually. So I didn't think I was going to be able to have enough time to do it, but I was able to barricade myself in the garage for about 20 minutes and go ahead and get it done. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that and see how people like it and how it resonates with people, and hopefully helps at least one person. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. That's really awesome.
I'm excited to check these out.
Yeah, for real. Awesome.
Yeah, they're doing okay on YouTube. They're doing all right.
Do you throw in some metaphors and analogies in there?
Oh, it's all me. It's
yeah. So all right. I know I'm gonna love it then already. Yeah. So
yes.
In there. Yeah. I'll give you a sneak peek. So the name, the title. So the latest one that I just finished, the title, it's called "It's Not You, It's Me."
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yep.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dimitri, for being a guest on our show. We are just, I feel like I'm like at a loss for words right now. I just have so much gratitude for you in this conversation.
Yeah. I'm so happy you commented on that YouTube video. It's just like such an honor to connect with you. And it's just been such a joyful conversation with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, you both are way too kind. Way too kind. I appreciate you both immensely, and I appreciate the opportunity. This has been really cool. I've loved every moment of it, and I really love what you both are doing and have been doing, because I don't think it, not just because it's cool and it's really good content, but it's necessary. If everyone kind of got on their horse and they said, you know what, let's put this out there to the world, so that, because then people they feel more inclined to do the same. So I wish there would have been Margot and Abigail in my life way back when, maybe I would have, gotten over a lot of things a lot faster because they were, readily available. And I could see that other people were, also fighting that fight. And it would have been a great thing. So I really appreciate what you both do. And it's no small task what you're doing, and really, really powerful stuff. That's it impacted me a whole lot at 1 a.m. in the morning when I'm trying to, get my son situated with some food. So I really do appreciate you both, and best of luck and good wishes with everything else as well. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just my whole heart feels so warm.
Yeah, I wish we were all together, group hug.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
It's so true. Yes. Maybe one day we're kind of planting seeds for an anxiety warrior retreat. So maybe one day
wow. Okay.
I'll meet in person,
sure.
all of our former guests and everyone. So, all right, Dimitri, thank you so much for being with us today. And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. You both have a great afternoon.
I am speechless a little bit. I feel like there were so many amazing moments to this conversation. I literally don't have any idea. I know we sound like broken records. We always say this, but
we do.
It's always true. It's always true. I feel maybe even a little bit more speechless than I have in quite a while.
I would agree. Yes.
I just feel like there was so much depth and honesty and beauty to Dimitri's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I don't know what to add. I know that we're here to just recap and take away, right? But it's like, what is there to even remember that all of our warrior listeners won't be already just stewing on, right?
Yeah,
and like marinating on.
I mean, and we could be taking away like everything from the episode. Like there's so many takeaways.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for that out. I take away everything. The end.
It's just so good. It's like, right. How do we limit ourselves to just a couple takeaways?
It's so true. Yeah, I guess I kind of just said it. I felt so deeply connected to Dimitri's story, and it was certainly different. But I think my first takeaway was how somebody who's a different age than me, a different gender, a different race, can have the exact same experience that I had as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. He pretty much almost verbatim in some ways described what I went through when I had my first panic attack and when I had my first like smack in the face, as he called it, from that time in his life. And I just felt so deeply seen by him. I mean, throughout the conversation, but in that moment specifically, I just felt like it's just wild looking at someone literally via Zoom that looks completely different from you and having that shared experience. And that's my favorite thing about not just this conversation, but all of our conversations, is that it just reminds us, and he reminded us over and over again, of how much our humanity connects us and how we can and should be more deeply connected to our humanity. And I just felt so deeply seen through the eyes and through the lens of somebody that is so completely different from me.
Right.
Had been on a completely different life path and trajectory and, and all the things.
Right.
So
you
different.
weren't playing football. You're not, Right.
I mean, literally our lives couldn't have been more separate in so many different ways, but yet anxiety is that connection and that specific age frame too, right? Being an 18-year-old, and we spent so much time talking about that in this episode, just like what that time of our lives has meant. What it continues to mean to me in retrospect, when I think back to 18-year-old me. And I absolutely loved the advice that he would give his younger self, and just sit back and relax. You will rise again, right? Like you said, I'm kind of, I'm kind of flat right now, but you'll come back up. And like, I mean, there was just so much depth and vulnerability in it. And just so grateful.
Yeah. No. And I mean, I feel like, this is why I love having guests, right? Because we just, when we walk out into the world and we're just, around all of these strangers, we have no idea what anyone's walking with. Right. But when we can hear other people's stories, it's like, oh yeah, there's so much more we share in common. Right. Like, we might have different life path and different everything, but yet at our core, there's so much we share, because again, I feel the same way. Like I heard so much of my story in his story. Right. And So it's that like that deep connection that we only get when we give people the space to share authentically about themselves. One of my huge takeaways was, he was talking about some of the affirmations, and he didn't say affirmations, but he was saying like, things that would help him to cope with like, this too shall pass. And then he also said, trouble don't last always. Right. But when he talked about this too shall pass, he said that in that moment, it would give him a hope. And for me, it just like when he said that, it made me think of Darius and the power of hope, and just how, how much having hope helps, right? Because things can feel so dark with anxiety. Things can feel so overwhelming. Things can feel so lonely, right? But we can find these things like these words, like these phrases, like these people that just give us hope, that help us keep moving on. Right. And we might not even know what we're necessarily hoping for. Right. We might just hope like, oh God, I wish this anxiety would go away. Right. Or I hope
to move to the
peace,
next moment. Yeah.
But just how powerful hope is. And you just hear it in so many people's stories. But I love that he explicitly said that this phrase, this too shall pass, gave me hope. And so that was like one of my takeaways, is just how powerful it is to find something that gives you hope that you can anchor to when you are having more of those more challenging times.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, completely. And I wrote down like, quotes to anchor to, like literally what you just said, right? Like, he didn't use the word affirmation. I use the word affirmation, like, cause that's kind of what it was that he was saying. It's like phrases, things that we can pull to quickly in the moment that are our port in the storm, right? It's just kind of like these flashes of words that can carry so much weight and meaning if we assign it weight and meaning to them, right? For good or for worse, for better or for worse. And so when we can practice assigning, meaningful and powerful words to ourselves in a tough moment and have that be part of our practice, what can change doesn't have the power to give us that hope, doesn't have a power to change us even briefly in this moment, or to help us move more quickly out of a moment, even though, as he said, there's no quick fixes, right? They made that comment about going back to the advice he would give his younger self, just like, you can't, this isn't a microwave dinner. This is something that needs to go in the oven.
Yes.
Oh yeah. The king of analogies and drawing those lines and metaphors. I think my other big takeaway, and man, is it so hard. I'm struggling so hard not to say 40,000 more things.
I know.
But the other thing that landed on my heart the most was the connection that he had drawn between shame and pride.
Yes. Yep.
Because I just selfishly, I guess, I just felt like, yes, that's me. I see that. I see that. I see that air quotes problem in me. I saw it in my past. I see it in my present. Right. It's not as frequent. I'm able to move through it faster now and remind myself like, hey, this isn't you talking, right? This is your anxiety. Hey, strong people do get help. Strong people do ask for help, right? Like, and to not correlate, the pride that I feel in who I am with and connected to shame. And so I just greatly appreciated that whole kind of part of the conversation, just how he drew those connections so honestly.
Yeah.
That like when you asked him to speak more about noticing shame coming up for him, how would he describe it? And just how connected it is to the idea of we need to hide or don't air your dirty laundry. And I just love that he broke that cycle for himself, for his family, for his community, his followers, people that are going to listen to this episode and listen to his motivational voiceovers, and for his child as they grow, I mean, just how breaking generational cycles of stigmatizing mental health and getting help and therapy can just change the game.
Right. Yeah. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to be able to break that cycle. I feel the same way in regards to the pride and the shame. Like when he was talking about that, it was like a light bulb went off for me. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes. they are like the same, and they hold us back from actually getting the support we could need or want, because we're convinced like I have too much pride to do this, but it leads to me hiding and feeling ashamed of hiding who I am. It's like, I mean, it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I won't use that as my takeaway, because there's one other thing I just want to highlight, and it, we've mentioned it multiple times, but for me, my final takeaway would be his metaphors and analogies. And when we're done recording, please tell me the difference between the two. I always confuse it.
I think I'm confusing them too. I think they were analogies and not metaphor. I feel like a metaphor is when you use other language to describe something that's completely different.
Solid as a rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Is a metaphor.
I think so. Right.
But living life as an oven, not a microwave, is an analogy.
All right. Sure.
Yeah.
I think they're both cousins. Yeah,
I know.
They're related.
Yeah.
Let's not think too hard about it.
Yeah. That for me, the takeaway wasn't that is just how valuable using analogies are when talking about mental health. Because, like when he was saying the microwave and the oven, like for me, again, it was just this like click of, like we are so in this like fast food, fast getting everything environment. Of course, we would apply that to our mental health. Right. And so just how powerful analogies are in general for helping anyone understand a situation. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a huge takeaway, is just like when conversing with people, if you can find analogies to explain your experience, people might get it a little more. Or if you can find analogies to, explain, or not explain, but teach something, right? Just how valuable those are, because people can see themselves in analogies. They're like, oh yeah, I understand the difference between a microwave and an oven, and how long it'll take to put something in a microwave versus an oven. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, like we kept commenting like, oh my God, I love your analogy. But like, I just think it's such a powerful skill. And he is a motivational speaker, but a powerful skill when speaking to people.
Yeah. It adds that visual, right? Yeah. It adds another layer of like, yes, we're using auditory, we're using speaking media here. We're using language that is just coming through your ears. But if you can picture it, if you can visualize it, as you just said, it can just potentially reach more folks, right? And have them understand you and their own experience a little bit better, because they can make those connections to other things that they know well in their real life. And because talking about anxiety and mental health is very complicated and very unique to each one of us warriors, that relating it to something that is very universal, as you're saying, right, can be can potentially, anyway, we won't speak for everyone listening, but can potentially add so much value, as you said. Yeah. It could add so much more understanding of like, and for warriors that are not, for people that are not anxiety warriors, but maybe love and support anxiety warriors, right? Using these analogies can be helpful to have them understand their loved one's experience better. So like, even if we're not describing you, right? Or he, Dimitri wasn't describing you in that moment. Hey, maybe you love someone that struggles with anxiety. And so you can have a better idea of what they might be dealing with. Yeah, I love it. So good. Thank you so much, Dimitri, for being a guest on our show. We were just so honored to have you and grateful for all of your time spending with us. Warriors, if you'd like to connect with us for any reason, you can hop on over to Instagram, join our Instagram fam. We're at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. Feel free to shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com to shout out your wins of the week, big or small. Let us know if you think you'd be a great fit as a guest on our show. We'd love to have you on our platform, help you share your story here on Anxiety Warriors. And please take 2 seconds, smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this right now. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our episodes over there, just like Dimitri did. Maybe leave a comment on a recent episode, maybe Dimitri's episode, maybe this one. You're right there right now.
Yes.
Drop us a note. Let us know, that's where you're listening and that's where you're enjoying our show, hopefully. And click on over into our show notes or our link in bio on Instagram and shop our threadless merch shop to grab yourself some Anxiety Warriors podcast swag, mugs and journals and yoga mats and hoodies and t-shirts and everything, oh my.
Mhm.
Grab yourself something fun with one of our amazing Anxiety Warriors podcast logos or fun catchphrases over there in some amazing styles. So we hope that you do one or all of those things.
Yes.
ASAP.
All
us
of the
out.
things.
Every one of those things we're doing right now.
Hope you all were taking notes.
Oh, we love you, warriors.
Yes. Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We are really so grateful that we get to do this with y'all.
Till next time.